Welcome to Honeybee, real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. What I'm about to share completely shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my family, and my life. It all began with an unplanned visit on a Saturday morning, and ended with me realizing that nearly a decade of my life was built on lies. This is a story of how one afternoon turned my world upside down, and how a DNA test revealed a betrayal I never imagined. My name is James, and for 9 years, I truly believed I was living the dream. I was married to Danielle, the woman I thought was my perfect match. We had been together for more than 9 years, and I honestly believed we had one of those rare marriages that others admired. Danielle was smart, beautiful, and seemed to share my values when it came to family and commitment. When our son was born, I felt like my life had finally reached perfection. I threw myself into being the husband and father I'd always wanted to be. I worked long hours, took on extra projects, and made sure Danielle and our son had everything they needed. But providing financially wasn't enough for me. I wanted to be fully present. I went to school events, spent weekends playing with my son, building forts in the backyard, and making memories. Danielle often told me how thankful she was that she had a husband who was not only a provider, but also emotionally involved. Her friends echoed the same thing. I would overhear them telling her how lucky she was, how their husbands forgot anniversaries, missed school events, or worked late into the night. Danielle would smile and admit she knew she was fortunate. I wore that pride like a badge of honor, being the husband others envied and the father who was always there. Danielle was very close with her circle of friends. Anna, married to a lawyer, Beverly, whose husband was constantly traveling, and Barbara, who had been part of their group for years. Barbara was always pleasant toward me. She and Danielle spent hours talking, sharing recipes, and planning outings. But at some point, Barbara's marriage unraveled. Danielle often came home telling me how hard things were for her, how Barbara's husband's behavior was pushing her toward divorce. It was long, messy, and painful. Danielle was there for her constantly, inviting her over for dinner, taking her out for coffee, and offering support. I pitied Barbara then. She seemed crushed by the end of her marriage, and Danielle's friendship was clearly her lifeline. Looking back now, I wonder how much of Barbara's vulnerability was real and how much was staged. But at the time, I saw a broken woman leaning on good friends. I never thought twice about her being at our house so often, or about her asking questions about my schedule. Then came that Saturday morning, the day everything changed. Danielle had woken up early, making a list of errands she wanted to run. She left after breakfast, saying she'd be out for a while. I was looking forward to a quiet morning with my son, who had been working on a school project for weeks. Not long after Danielle left, I heard footsteps on the porch. I wasn't expecting her back so soon, but when I peeked out the window, it wasn't Danielle. It was Barbara. She was dressed up more than I'd ever seen her on a Saturday morning. Her hair was styled, her makeup done. I thought maybe she had plans later and was just stopping by. When I opened the door, she smiled and asked if Danielle was home. That struck me as odd because Danielle's car wasn't even in the driveway. I told her Danielle was out. Then Barbara said something that should have raised alarms. She admitted she already knew Danielle wasn't home. She had called her beforehand. But she wanted to wait inside because she didn't want to be alone. At the time, I brushed it off as her needing comfort. I let her in like I always did. My son was busy with his project. So Barbara and I sat in the living room and chatted. For the first 20 minutes, it felt completely normal. Just the usual talk about mutual friends and life updates. But something shifted. She kept glancing around, studying the photos on the wall, the furniture, the details of our home. Then she grew quiet, almost intense. My son popped in to say hello before going back to his room. That's when Barbara moved. She suddenly got up and walked over to me on the couch. Instead of sitting across or giving me space, she sat down right beside me. So close our legs touched. Her perfume was stronger than usual. And then, without a word, she put her hand on my lap. I froze. My brain stopped. This was my wife's best friend, sitting in my living room, while my son was in the next room and Danielle was out shopping. I stared at her hand, trying to make sense of it. I managed to ask what she was doing. She looked me in the eye and asked if I didn't find her attractive. My heart dropped. She leaned closer, speaking in a low voice about how lonely she was, how she had feelings for me, and how she had been waiting for the right chance. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was deliberate, planned. I stood up immediately and told her to leave. The look on her face changed instantly, from soft and desperate to sharp and venomous. As she walked to the door, she turned back and spat words that would ruin everything. She called me a fool for being loyal to a prostitute of a wife, and said I was too naive to realize I was raising another man's child. Then she left. Her words echoed in my mind like a curse. At first, I dismissed them as spite, but the way she said it with such certainty planted a seed of doubt I couldn't ignore. I told myself it was nonsense, but inside, I knew I needed proof. I researched DNA tests, ordered one, and after secretly collecting samples, I sent them off. Waiting for those results was torture. On the outside, I carried on as usual: work, family dinners, bedtime routines. On the inside, I was unraveling. Every time I looked at my son, I questioned everything. When the results finally came, I opened the envelope alone in my car. The words burned into my eyes. 0% probability of paternity. 9 years of my life collapsed in that moment. My son, the boy I'd raised, loved, and dedicated my life to, wasn't mine. And worse, Danielle had known, at least deep down. She had lived a lie every single day of our marriage. That night, I confronted her. At first, she denied everything. She blamed Barbara, claimed it was lies, even suggested the test might be wrong. But when I pressed, she broke. Through tears, she admitted she'd had an affair early in our marriage. When she found out she was pregnant, she prayed the baby was mine. She convinced herself it was, buried the truth, and never looked back. She said she loved me, that the boy was mine in every way that mattered, and begged me not to let biology destroy us. But to me, the betrayal wasn't just the affair, it was the years of deception. Every bedtime story, every proud father moment, every sacrifice, all built on a lie. I couldn't stay. Divorce was the only option. Danielle resisted, pleaded, and even fought legally, but my decision was final. The hardest part was cutting ties with the boy. I loved him deeply, but continuing meant living forever in Danielle's lie. I chose a clean break. Months later, the divorce was finalized. I walked away from the life I thought was real and into the unknown, alone, but finally living in truth. Barbara's motives, whether spite or some twisted honesty, didn't matter in the end. She forced me to face reality. And though it destroyed everything I knew, it gave me something I hadn't had in years. The chance to start over, this time on honest ground. Sometimes the most devastating truths come from the most unlikely messengers. And sometimes, even when the truth tears your world apart, it's still better than living in a beautiful lie.